we actually just pass a string, and that serves as a sort of lookup to this collection of icons and returns them. So that's kind of nice. That is browser dependent, but it should be available if you're using a modern browser. All right, so I'm gonna minimize this and go ahead and save our layout page. And now what I'm going to do is, if you recall, at the beginning of this series, I spoke a little bit about this www root directory, which contains the static files for application. So this, of course, includes the CSS as well as the images. So we're going to go ahead and open up this site.css file. Okay, I'm just going to close out some of these other windows. And so our site CSS is actually just going to get loaded in our layout file. So if we take a look back at our views and then shared and then layout, we can see that it's getting included here. Likewise, the minified version will get included when we're not in development. In any case, where we're actually going to write our CSS will of course be in this site.css file. Now, for the purposes of this series, I'm just going to go ahead and write all the CSS for application in site.css. Now, if you wanted to make it more maintainable perhaps, then I would highly recommend spreading your CSS out into multiple files and including perhaps only what's necessary to specific pages in separate files. We actually don't have a whole lot to write here. I mean, we've got quite a bit, but it should be enough to at least get us started by writing all the CSS in this single location for now. So I'm going to change a few things here. We're going to remove the default styling on the body, and I'm going to specify a new padding value here of 50 pix and then 0, 0, 20 pix. 50 pixels and then 0 on the right, and then 20 pixels on the bottom, and then 0 on the left. Next, I'm going to set a background color of something slightly off-white here, so we'll set it to EE, so a very light gray. And then what I'd like to do is to actually specify a background image. So we specify the background color as sort of a backup, but the background image, just to make things look kind of cool for this series, we'll actually specify an image that we'll actually just put in our images directory here, and we'll create a theme folder perhaps. And I'm just going to call this bg01.ping. And so this is the images directory that we're referring to here. And so I'm just going to right click and add a new folder called theme. And if you recall back, I have SQL Management Studio up here when we were looking at our forums. So if we select star from forums, we specified an image URL here with this /images/forum relative path as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a folder in here called forum. Now, very shortly, I'll also show you how to host these images in the cloud using Azure Blob Storage, which we'll look at in just a little while. But we'll also have the ability to kind of package some of our static content here with the application itself. So I'm going to specify a few more properties in the background here. We'll say no repeat, and we'll attach it so that the background stays fixed when we scroll, and we'll have kind of a full splash background image, and we can also center it as well. Okay, so I'm just going to drop a background image that I'd like to use here in my theme directory called bg-01.ping, and I have that on my computer here from the demo site. I'll also bring in this front splash as well, image that we'll use on the home page. So I'll bring these both into the theme. Okay, so we'll say all right. And something I'd also like to mention is, if you're interested, checking out a site like Pexels is a good one to find some free stock photos that you can kind of use for your own projects. This is where I got some images, I believe, for things like the background splash. So you can just search for something like mountains or whatever, and then download these. Make sure to attribute them to the author if they require attribution. A lot of them actually don't, so you can just download them and use as is, or you can take them into Photoshop and make them useful for your application. And so let's go ahead and fire up the application and make sure everything is still working more or less properly. Okay, so yeah, you can see the background image that I have here, and we have the new Navbar. Looks like it's working properly. except for the fact that we've duplicated the register and sign in icons here. So let's go ahead and revisit that really quickly, but it looks like the CSS is starting to work in terms of at least our body. So we're gonna go ahead and minimize this, and then I'm gonna go back into layout.cshtml, and it looks like, yeah, the ones that I created were called sign in or register, and so we need to find out where this login and secondary register is coming from. Okay, so it's not actually in our layout, and so I presume that's probably in our login partial here. Yeah, so it looks like this login partial is getting rendered. If we search here, oh, I see. And so down inside of our navbar here, we have this await HTML partial async login partial. So what that's doing is it's actually rendering whatever is inside this login partial HTML file, sort of injecting that in place here. So we can actually just delete this and then save the file and then go back to our page and refresh. And yeah, so you can see that that is now gone. All right, so let's continue on our styling now. Go back into our CSS, and I'm gonna style our navbar with .navbar, and we're just gonna apply a quick box shadow to it. And we'll make it dark, but nothing too drastic. Come back and refresh. And so now it's very subtle, but we do have a box shadow under our navbar. And now I'd like to go ahead and write the class for our nav logo. Suppose this could be an ID rather than a class. But in any case, we'll just point it to have a background image, again, in our static files here. And we're going to call it app logo s.png for small. And likewise, we're going to have a background size of 100% with no repeat. So I'll just copy that from above here. And I'm going to apply a little bit of padding to the right. So we'll say padding right 16 pixels. And we'll specify the width explicitly as 150 pixels. And then I'll apply a bit of margin as well to the right of 12 pixels. Okay, this is all just kind of tweaking it a little bit. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and drag that logo in. So come back here to my demo, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the small here, and we'll go ahead and just drag that in directly into our images folder. Yep, and for that we're going to need to stop the server, so I'll stop it, and I'm going to go ahead and drag it in now. Come back and say OK to the dialog. And while the server's stopped, let's go ahead and we might as well just drop the forum images inside of our forum directory as well. So I'll provide these as part of this entire package, but I just went ahead and created some standard sort of square images that should format nicely with our theme for various languages that you can use. And of course, feel free to make your own as well. You could probably make them much better than I could here. But we'll go ahead and use the ones that I've created for the series. And we'll say OK, and I'm going to say never prompt again. Okay, so we have some forum images. And the other thing I have here, although our user profile images will be stored in the cloud, I'm going to go ahead and also include a folder called users. And these are just some more stock photos that I cropped and sized so that they're all the same size, so that you can use as well as demo files if you prefer. So we'll go ahead and bring this in, and I'll go to images.users, and yeah, you can kind of bring these in if you like. Alright, so we'll go ahead and save that. I'm going to start the server back up that we have all the images required for this application, at least in terms of our static files. Okay, so we have our logo at the top of the screen. It's not looking too great yet, but we'll go ahead and fix that here very shortly. So let's minimize this, or actually we can just put it off to the side, and I'll do the same for this, and just go ahead and unpin the Solution Explorer for right now. And in our layout.html file, I'm going to close the login partial, but the class that we have on the navbar currently is navbar inverse. So I'd like the default version of the Bootstrap navbar that makes it a lighter background. We can go ahead and refresh. And so our logo looks better against the lighter background. And you can see that our logo is sitting inside a navbar header class. And then itself has a navbar brand nav logo class. Let's go back into site CSS. Okay, so now in our nav logo class, I'm also going to add this background position center. And if we refresh, that kind of centers the logo a little bit more nicely. So we can have our Navbar class, and then these child list elements, we can set their font weight to bold. And we'll refresh, and I won't refresh after every change, but just to give you an idea of where it's going. And then now I'm going to define this section header class with a background color, and I'm going to use RGBA syntax here to give it a dark background, but not quite fully opaque, so we'll have a slight transparency to it. I'm going to apply some padding. Okay, and then we have a section heading, which we're going to apply basically to the elements contained in that header, and we're going to have a color of white and a font size of 1.3 EM. And here we'll implement this font family Roboto. So we start implementing our Google fonts, and then some padding just on the top and bottom. And a border on the bottom of 1 pixel, and we'll make it a solid dark blue color with like 335. So sort of like a dark blue or purplish almost color. And then we'll set a margin at the bottom of 12 pixels. Okay, let's go ahead and refresh the page. So not much is changing on our front page just yet, but we'll continue just to fill out the CSS here. We'll have the post heading with a color of white, font size of 1.3, and font family of Roboto, and then some padding here, and maybe we'll make our post heading just slightly smaller, so like 1.1 or something. Clearly the CSS isn't fully optimized. You would definitely want to go through, eventually, especially if front end was more of your thing, want to go through and make certain selectors more reusable perhaps. Alright, but then we'll define a section info that we can use here, and we'll have a height of 400 pixels and a background color of white. And so this is where we're starting to get into some of the front page styling now. So we'll have this front page splash class with the background image of the URL at our images, and then we have theme, and then we have our front splash image. And I'll go ahead and set that to not repeat and be positioned actually to the right. Okay, and finally, okay, so let's go ahead and refresh. And we're starting to get, we got the image up here at the very least, so let's go ahead and continue formatting that. Got this front page learn class with Roboto as our font family, and then some padding here at the top and left. So I have 12 pixels, 0, 0, 32 pixels on the left, and a height of 360 pixels. And I've got a section description here with a very light gray color again, and a front page heading where we'll make the font size like pretty large, so 3.2 EM, and we'll have a margin around that on top and bottom of 16 pixels with nothing otherwise, and we'll refresh. And so, yep, starting to come together slowly but surely. Our heading is looking larger, but clearly we still have a little bit more work to do here. So I'm going to say front page subheading, and we'll make that a little bit smaller, but still quite large, so 2 EM. And then this front page top container, we'll apply some padding here. And a background color of this blue color, 2569D5. don't have a very solid palette, just kind of going for colors that seem to look nice together. I have a font family of Roboto as well. Okay, so we'll refresh the page. So our title is looking, so our subtitle is now looking a little bit better. And now what I'm going to do is to go ahead and paste the home search class CSS. So yeah, we've got a width of 100%. It's going to be on this search bar here with a little bit of margin, and we're going to make the background more or less transparent, or at least very close to transparent. Apply some padding, make sure that it doesn't have a border, and then set it to be rather tall, and then the font family that will go in here will be Roboto Mono, just a stylistic element to kind of simulate the feel of, you know, working in code, for instance. And then we'll make it bold and have a little bit of transition. We're just going to change it a little bit in terms of the colors and apply a very subtle box shadow whenever this search is brought into focus. So if we go ahead and refresh the page, you can see our search bar here. So I'm going to make this page full screen now, and we can see that the heading is kind of starting to work for us. So we can type in a search query here, and yeah, so that's looking halfway decent. And so when this box is focused, we get this sort of highlighted effect. All right, so I think we can now style this sort of latest post section. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this back over. So we'll scroll down a bit here, and now this will be our front page content class, which will have a background color, again, of almost white here. We'll just make it RGBA and 255 for everything, and like a 0.9 alpha. And then apply some padding of like 16 pixels here. So go ahead and save that. And then our latest posts ID tag will get font size of 1.2 EM, font weight bold, and sort of darker gray color here. And we're just going to apply some margin around it as well, at least on the top and bottom here. So if I refresh the page now, okay, so yeah, we're getting something that's looking a little bit more reasonable, though of course we still have a little ways to go, but we have a front page now of our own. So we'll keep going here with the CSS for a little while. And what I'm actually going to do, just for the sake of brevity here, is to post in some more styles here having to do specifically with the posts page. And so I'm going to paste these here, and you can kind of either pause the video and copy yourself, or again, copy any of these CSS files from the source code that I provided with the series. Okay, likewise, I'm going to do the same now for the forum index. So I'll go ahead and paste that. And this one's a bit longer, so I'm going to need to scroll here in just a minute. So I'll scroll back up here. And so this is the top from what I just pasted here. And so I'll pause here and then scroll down. Okay, so and this is taking care of our forum logos. I'm controlling the height and width on those icons. And then some of these classes here where you're seeing Roboto Mono, I'm using that in various places for like the subheadings here, or the subtitles underneath, sort of like the main elements of these listing objects. Okay, I'm actually going to paste one more bit of CSS here relating to the posts. And if you'll forgive me, I'll just clean this up a little bit here. So that's cleaned up a little bit. Okay, so you can start to see our latest post kind of starting to look a little bit better. We still, it looks like our image isn't formatted exactly correctly here in terms of our forum icons. So we can take care of that in just a moment. And in fact, we can just inspect it here if we right click on this element. And this is kind of a way to troubleshoot your CSS a little bit. You can see that we have this forum logo class, which is definitely getting the background image because it looks like the Python image that we have assigned in our database. And the background size is set to 100%, but it's not actually correctly filling the space that we've provided for it here. And I see that it's actually because we have a typo in our inline CSS here. And so what I'm going to do is just remove that inline CSS, and we'll specify the background size of 100% directly here in our CSS file. So we'll do that, and then yeah, we'll go ahead and just head back here, and in our Solution Explorer, go to the index.cshtml in our home view and correct this typo. So yeah. We needed a colon here, but in any case, since it's specified actually in the CSS file itself and not inline, I'm just going to go ahead and remove it. So we can come back to the page, and if we refresh now, the icons are looking a lot better. Okay, so our home page is actually looking more or less correct. Let's see if we can still click on a link from the latest post here. And now our post page needs quite a bit of styling work. So let's actually revisit this view in our solution. We'll come back here, and I'm going to close the inspector, and we'll open up Solution Explorer, and we'll go to our post index. And I'll also go ahead and make a commit here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and minimize that so we can see our page somewhat. And so before we just had this kind of simple layout to make sure that our post index was working, and now we're going to actually wire it up to look a little bit more proper. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll keep what we had down below for the time being, and we're going to create another div class container body content. And since we're reusing that, that might be something that belongs in the layout perhaps. But we only have a few pages, and so for now we'll keep it, keep this container in each of the views that we'll need to render. And so we'll have a div class row post header, and inside of it our div class post heading, and then in here we'll have a span of class post index title with @model.title. Okay, and here I'm going to create a span ID with a heading button that we'll need to style up for creating a new post. So we'll use our tag helper here for an ASP controller to the forum controller and the ASP action topic. And we'll pass it the ASP route ID that's on this post index view model. So this is actually going to be the forum ID. So in this case, @model.forum.id. Oops, sorry, it's actually just directly on the model, so @model.forum.id. And it looks like that's something that we actually need to add, so we'll add that here in just a moment. But now we'll say class is button, and we'll style it as a back button here. And this will allow us to say like back to the forum that you came from. So @model.forum name, which it looks like we'll have to add that to our view model as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do that now. I'm going to go back into our Solution Explorer and just pin this here for the time being. And we'll go into our models and our post models, and then into our post index model. And what I'm going to do is stop the server and add those properties here. So the forum ID, as well as a string forum name. And so the ID will be used to pass to the route to return back to that particular topic, and the forum name will be used to actually the text for that link. And now of course we need to make sure that those get set when we visit our post index. So we'll need to go into our post controller here and look for the index action. And we'll go ahead and set those here. Okay, and so once again, you can see in this way that we're only providing the post index view with the data that it needs in the form of this post index view model. All right, so back in the index.cshtml for the post index model, and just to avoid any confusion, I'm going to go ahead and close everything but this tab. And I'm now going to go ahead and create a few more rows. So we have the row, which is sort of the header or the heading of this post index page. And in fact, we can start taking a look at it again if we fire up the server. So we have this link now that will take us back to the Python forum. So that's pretty cool. Of course, we don't have all the styling set up yet. And so now let's work on actually building out the rest of this page.